welcome back to the show. This evening we have a returning guest who we spoke to about 10 months ago when he launched the first issue of his book, Blood of Atlantis. And he's back because he's currently running the campaign for the second one. So let's bring him in, find out what he's been up to, and find out about the new book. Hey, John, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Chad? Thanks for having me back.
Oh, well, thanks for taking the time to come back. It must have not been too bad of an experience the first time.
That was great.
So, before we get talking about the book and all that, for those who may have not seen our last interview, tell us a little bit about yourself as a writer and comic book reader.
Sure. I am a fantasy author and comics writer from New York. I started writing prose fiction about 10 to 12 years ago, just kind of on a whim. And then I kind of developed some ideas, and that eventually led to an urban fantasy series that's still ongoing. And then in 2019, I came across just like a random article about the House of X launch, by Jonathan Hickman, the big X-Men relaunch. And I hadn't really read comics since I was in middle school. And so I kind of, bought that, but it was maybe coming out like the following week. So I bought that book on a whim and was like immediately hooked. And then kind of followed that to its conclusion over that summer, and then followed that to the X-Men relaunch, fall 2019. And then my interest kind of like spiraled upward. And now I have, way too many pulls, and I'm, tracking way too many books, and, reading all these stuff from all sorts of publishers, not just Marvel. And that eventually kind of led to me wanting to write my own stuff. So I put out the first issue of Blood of Atlantis last June. We had a Kickstarter, successfully funded, and fulfilled that campaign last summer. And in the past year, been working on issue two and some other projects, and now we've got issue two back, live on Kickstarter.
And why don't you tell us again about what of Atlantis is about and kind of the inspirations behind that?
Sure. Blood of Atlantis is a modern fantasy adventure. It takes place starting in New York City. It's about takes place in a world like our own, except there's kind of this hidden magical undercurrent that exists. And our main character, Beatrice, has kind of been in this world for about 10 years, kind of discovering secrets, and she's discovered that all the myths that that we know in the real world, in their world, they're not, a lot of them aren't really myths. There's like some truth to it. So one of them she's trying to seek out is the lost city of Atlantis. So she's kind of gathering friends and resources and information and relics to try to find the lost city of Atlantis. So we have issue one. We're kind of introduced to the world that she inhabits, and kind of building like a group of people, questers, that she's gonna the crew to kind of take on this task of finding the lost city. Um, and it's inspired kind of by Indiana Jones, and there's kind of a Dungeons and Dragon undercurrent. There's like an undercurrent in this world which takes place in the same world as my urban fantasy book series, where people are kind of doing these like Dungeons and Dragon style quests in the real world for some kind of mysterious purpose, which we don't really get to in the comic series, but it's more of a focus in the book series. Um, and I grew up also watching Gargoyles, on the Disney afternoon, and that show did like a great job of weaving in kind of all sorts of mythology. So it's a little inspired by that as well.
So you said that issue one kind of sets up the world. So
Yeah.
where does issue two find us?
So issue one ends with a cliffhanger, as one is wont to do in comics. And in issue one, we kind of discover this big secret, and in issue two, it's kind of like chasing after the next key or step in finding Atlantis. We find out about basically Atlantis had advanced knowledge, and when they predicted that the island was going to be destroyed, they found a way to kind of store that knowledge in what are called the pillars of Atlantis. We find out what those are in some respect in issue one, and where they are, and that's kind of our focus going across the series. We'll be finding these like pillars which have different uh, categories or classes of knowledge and abilities, and where they are today. So in issue two, we're kind of on the trail for another pillar of Atlantis, and we're the first time venturing outside of New York City to an exotic locale.
And who are the main characters?
So we have Beatrice, who is kind of a seasoned veteran of this world, and she has teamed up with the Svetlana, who runs a coffee shop slash speakeasy in the West Village of Manhattan. And they kind of stumble, and these two newbie questers, Damon and Topo, kind of stumble across them. They get paired up on this multi-person raid to go into the botanical gardens in the first issue and steal a piece of the corpse flower, which is this giant, smelly flower that smells terrible. Um, they've it's kind of a randomly put together crew. So we have kind of an A story of Svetlana and Beatrice who are going off to find kind of another clue about one of the pillars of Atlantis, and then we have our B story with Damon and Topor doing kind of a training session in New York City to kind of get more seasoned because they're very, very new to this whole thing.
Nice. So, who are you working with on the book? Art and coloring and lettering and all those other things that just
Yeah,
bring your writing to life.
yeah. So Francine Delgado, who is a Canadian Costa Rican artist, is back doing interiors. This time she's also doing the coloring. And we have Tobin Rassicot, who is a letterer also from Canada. I think he's from the Ontario. Um, so yeah, so same group from last time. And we have, a bunch of different variant cover artists: Laura Braga, Kath Lobo, and Ugo Smith. So they each kind of bring a different vibe with their covers. So that's always a fun challenge, and to try to find, a good an artist who kind of matches up with like a cover idea. I think I spend way too much time figuring out like what a good variant cover should be, but that's part
Mhm.
of the fun of it.
So, while you're kind of following that thread, what are you offering this time for people to support the project?
So we're right now we have four covers. We have our A cover by Francine, and then the three variant covers. We are currently tracking towards the second stretch goal, which will be an unlocked design variant cover. That's going to feature some of Francine's sketches, um, kind of modeled after the like Marvel and DC do a lot of these design variant covers,
Mhm.
which I happen to like. I don't think I have one within. No, I don't think I have one on my shelf within grabbing distance. So that hopefully will be unlocked. So we'll have a fifth cover. And then a new thing we have in this campaign is a chibi pin that Beatrice that Francine designed. So I'm really excited about that. Excited to get that. The mock-up looks really cool. I'm excited to get that like in the physical pin. Um, and hopefully we could do kind of a collection of pins as the campaigns progress.
So, how the first campaign was successful?
Yeah.
How what lessons did you learn from that campaign that you're applying to this one?
Last time around, it was, I mean, I think we planned it out far ahead where we got the issue done and had several month lead up time. This time, kind of, it's a little more familiar with what we need to do for kind of pre launch marketing, and we have a bigger kind of group of fans to market to. So the challenge is just getting people re-engaged, compared to like a Marvel or DC or a regular book in the comic shop that comes out every month. Like we've had a 10-month gap, so we want to
Mhm.
takes a lot more lead up time to get people reminded about the series. um so I made sure kind of to like, okay, we're teasing up like 2 months before, like, hey, it's coming. We have our Kickstarter banner. I think we revealed a month and a half, 2 months before the campaign. And then when we hit the month before the campaign, that's when like the big push really starts. I didn't want to do too early because I think having a 2 to 3 month lead up to a campaign, people kind of get exhausted with the messaging. And then just making sure everything. I like to have it, all the covers and the interior of the issue done before we launch, or very very close to being done. So making sure that's all lined up, and also lining up like we have the pin, we have stickers and trading cards, and getting that all squared away and done so that you can show people this is what you're going to get. It's not like something that I'm still working on, and you'll see it eventually. And getting people comfortable that like you're going to back and we're going to fulfill very quickly, so you're not waiting for months to get the issue.
Right. Now, is is this story like a set number of issues, or are you just kind of seeing how the story develops and how the fans follow? Or I don't know. I don't know if you
Yeah,
can, want to divulge that, how
yeah,
detailed of a plan, but just
yeah. My near term goal, I think, is to get to 5 issues and
Mhm.
have a collected trade. So hopefully we can do that within the next year or two. And then after that, I would love for it to keep going and for it to kind of be ongoing for, another, 2 or 3 or 4 more volumes. 'Cause I think we could tell kind of an epic, fun story, but it'll also depend on, what the readers want. And I have other kind of series I'm developing that kind of would love to get in the rotation so that, you could be getting a comic from me, on Kickstarter, more than once every 10 months, like once a quarter or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Just have new
So
entry points for people to kind of discover my work.
sure.
Yeah.
So coming from prose, writing into the graphic or into the comic book,
Yeah.
um, what lessons have you learned? And like again from the first issue to to the second issue. I mean, have you learned pacing? Have you learned script writing? Hey,
Yeah, so I think with prose, sometimes you think less about visually what's going on. It's just like, okay, I'm going to have this story. There's going to be like long conversations. They might be in interesting places, but it's not the forefront of your mind. Doing the first issue and seeing it, and and then going to write the second issue, you really like need to think, much more visually while you're writing. You don't want an issue of just talking heads. You want like when you kind of do like if you like zoom out and show like all the pages in like one kind of big image, you want it to like have it be visually appealing and a lot of different stuff going on. So trying to write different types of pages, have well placed use of action. Um, so it's a definitely a much different, bigger challenge than just fiction. Fiction, you're also not so constrained on length, right? You can write 300, 400, 500 page book. If if you could figure out pacing and whatever, it's fine. For the comic, these are oversized issues, so it's 34 pages, but we're still kind of constrained by space. It can't go on forever. So that's another, the constraints I think help breed the creativity. Another thing I did um, since writing the first issue script is I did kind of a challenge where every day for like 2 months straight, I would try to write a 5 page like short story script just to like
mhm.
iterate through and get my like practice runs done of like writing something, right? Because I could between writing the first issue script and writing the second issue script, if I kind of just went right through that, I maybe improved a little, but I haven't really done a body of work of like writing to like improve by doing it. So I did that, um, and I kept it up for 2 months straight, just random different ideas. And the point was just to like get it done every day, get a habit, and like get kind of work those writing muscles. So that really helped.
So, who inspires you? Writers. It could be a comic book, comics, be it fiction.
Um, my One of my big inspirations is Jonathan Hickman. It's kind of funny because that's the first kind of that's the writer who brought me back to comics. Um, so I followed all of the X-Men stuff while he was on it. And what he's done since with Ultimate Spider-Man is like a really fun book. It's kind of he likes setting up huge like systems, and it has these like design pages and issues, and that's just such a kind of a departure from him. And but still, like that series is just phenomenal. Kieran Gillen is another writer who uh, I look to, and he's like a must buy. It's about 5 years ago during the pandemic when like kind of all the comic shop shut down and all the new stuff was pulled. I was like searching around for something to read, and a friend recommended Wicked and Divine. Like I binge read that over a month, and then Kieran Gillen came back to write Marvel again with Eternals and X-Men, and now he's doing power fantasy at Image, which is a really different and awesome take on superheroes. I'm also enjoying Ryan North writing, current writer of Fantastic Four and the One World Under Doom event.
Yeah.
Um,
So, am I correct? The comic books kind of work in with your novels, or um, am I getting that correctly? And how I guess do you kind of keep like continuity if there's a continuity between the two?
yeah, so they take place in the same world, and these issues are taking place after the second book in the series, but written very purposefully so that if you haven't read the books, like you're not missing anything. But if you have read the books, it's kind of an extra depth that you could see there. And then with this issue, I'm kind of interlacing the events in this issue a little bit with the other book, the book I'm writing, and in that same series, it's like an intermediate book between proper books 2 and 3. And so I have one of the pages has kind of like what a fun editor's note of like, hey,
Mhm.
something that's referenced like, oh, see this book to find out what's going on, in kind of classic editor note fashion. But again, you don't have to have, well, that book is not even out. But if you read that book, hopefully that'll be out in the fall, and you read this issue, you'll kind of see how things are lined up and how I'm kind of throwing things from one to the other. So hopefully people who are invested in the whole world and are reading both, get something extra, but it's not completely unnecessary to read both, but an extra something if you are.
And have you been to any conventions with the book? And how have the people been responding, in your opinion?
Yeah. Fortunately, Fran tabled every year at New York Comic Con, which is my local con here in Manhattan. So I was able to table with her for several hours over 2 days, last fall. And that was just really fun, kind of watching everyone walk by and pitching them and talking about the book and getting them interested.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry, I
we did.
missed you.
Uh, Hopefully, I mean, I go every. It's luckily that we have such a big convention here.
Mhm.
But that was fun, and we did a New York Comic Con print with the characters, which was also fun. So we kind of offer that as the New York a signed issue and a signed print to people. So and then Fran's been selling the issue. She does a lot. She does cons pretty frequently. So she's been selling the issue at. She went to Emerald City. She just got back from Calgary. She messaged me the other day and said, "I'm out of stock. I need more issues." So I think she's going to Dragon Con in at the end of the summer. So hopefully for
Oh,
that we'll have more. We'll have issue 2 ready and issue 1. Excuse me.
nice. So how? What's the best? Have you gotten any advice on your comic book writing? And you know, I mean, if you want to, who said it, and what was it? Or have you got any feedback from other creators?
I met Zach Kaplan, who wrote Kill All Immortals and some other stuff. Kill All Immortals at Dark Horse, which just finished up its first volume at New York Comic Con. Um, and some really good advice he gave me is, you have a tendency to want to like, okay, write a series and you want it to be 20 issues, multiple volumes. But maybe a better way at first is have a bunch of different ideas, have a bunch of different series that are just mini series or that are, not 50 issues long. You have more genres to be able to work in and more entry points for different types of readers and to build kind of your reader base across a wide variety of different stuff rather than putting your eggs all in one basket. I thought that was really good advice. So I'm trying to branch out and do other work that's like completely disconnected from this series.
Yeah. Anything else you want to mention about the series or the campaign that we perhaps didn't cover?
Uh, we're live until May 15th, so we got another 2 weeks. We'd be happy to have your support. We have catch-up tiers for new readers. We also have prints, stickers, the pin, as I mentioned, trading cards, trying to build like a trading card set over time. So we had 5 cards in the first issue and 5 cards, new cards for this issue. So there's lots of stuff for people to get. You can also get the books for my book series. But yeah, it's been a great campaign so far. It's great seeing kind of returning backers.
Hmm.
You get to recognize people's names over time, so that's great. Yeah, it's a lot of energy being on Kickstarter. It's a great community for comics.
And does this campaign feel different from the first one, or is this the same anxiety there?
Definitely the same anxiety. I don't know that ever goes away. I think
Yeah,
you hit one goal and then you want to hit a higher goal, and then if you hit that higher goal, you're not happy with that goal, and I think that's a healthy thing to have. Um, but yeah, it's fun and it's a challenge, and you get better at finding the audience, testing different messaging, each time.
hmm. And what advice, if any, would you have for people who are, you know, thinking about, doing a Kickstarter of their own for the first time? And
Yeah. I would definitely, if you're not backing comics projects on the platform, like go do that right now. You don't have to back for, you can get a digital issue most of the time for $5, but you don't even have to do that. If you back for $1, you'll be getting people's updates. You'll be seeing what kind of how creators are communicating. If you're backing people's campaigns and looking at the pages, you're getting a feel for how to create a page that's compelling. What's compelling to you, what's going to be that way you can kind of absorb all that. It's basically free research, right? It's all the campaign pages stay up in perpetuity, so definitely be backing. Backers like to see that creators are invested in the platform. Like, I don't like going on to Kickstarter and it's like one created, zero backed, right?
yeah,
Maybe there's a reason that, okay, they have a different account, but I like seeing people who are also invested. Like, it's a community, it's not just kind of a pre-order store.
true. All right. Well, if you want to give one final pitch for the book and where people can find you, if you're on the socials.
Sure. If you're a fan of Indiana Jones, D&D, and Gargoyles, you'll love Blood of Atlantis. It's a modern fantasy adventure comic. The Kickstarter is live through May 15th. You can get to it at bloodofatlantis.com. And I am on X and Instagram as my kind of main platforms, and also Facebook. Just search my name and you should find me.
All right. Well, best of luck as the campaign wraps up, and we'll continue to follow and support you over on our weekly Comic Watch, you know, roundup of the different projects.
Yep. Thanks so much, Chad. I really appreciate it.
And uh, let's catch up. Let's do another catch up once you're ready for the next issue. So see
Awesome.
what we'll have to see what you learn this time and
Yeah,
how you've grown as a writer since this time.
definitely.
All right. Well, have a good evening and best of luck as the campaign wraps up.
Thanks so much, Chad. Appreciate it.
Yep.